role. You're doing pretty damn good for yourself so far.
I must say so myself. Thank you.
The real reason R&B singer Nivea left the industry might finally be coming to light. After years of speculation, the world might finally be seeing why this talented artist suddenly disappeared at the height of her success.
I didn't want to do it no more. And I was addicted to where addiction is when you are completely out of control.
The industry that once promised Nivea fame and fortune was actually destroying her from the inside out.
Hell yeah, we all sit with each other. We all do the same shit. Like
it's
the
one little
producers, the
ecosystem.
singers, the songwriters, the rappers. Yes, we do. We're at work. Like y'all at work. Y'all co-workers. Same here.
From being financially stripped and physically abused by her manager, who obtained power of attorney over her at just 14 years old.
We had an apartment, we was living together, and then,
Okay, and
yeah.
please don't, if I'm overstepping boundaries, was he trying to be intimate with you?
And trying, we were intimate.
So it was like a relationship?
Yes, it was, definitely.
How old was he?
Oh, my lamb, he was a lot older than me.
To hitting rock bottom when she found herself desperately scraping cocaine residue from her carpet while fighting to keep custody of her children.
Want to do it no more. And I was addicted to where addiction is when you are completely out of control.
Nivea didn't just step away from music, she was pushed out by things most people couldn't survive. And this is just the beginning. So let's get into it. Nivea was one of the most promising voices in early 2000s R&B. Her big break came when she was featured on Mystikal's hit song, Danger, Been So Long, a track that dominated the charts and put her name in front of a massive audience. It was the perfect introduction, showing the world that she wasn't just another background vocalist, she had star power. The industry quickly took notice. Nivea landed a record deal, and it wasn't long before she was releasing her own music. In 2001, she dropped her self-titled debut album, a project that showcased her smooth, effortless vocals and a knack for crafting infectious hooks. Songs like Don't Mess With My Man and Laundromat became instant hits, proving that she wasn't just a feature artist, she was a star in her own right. She had the voice, the image, and the industry support to take her career to the next level. At the time, it seemed like nothing could stop her rise to the top. But despite her early success, something changed. Behind the scenes, her career was overshadowed by exploitation, abusive relationships, and battles with addiction. From a manager who controlled every part of her life to a toxic relationship with Lil Wayne that led her to quit music entirely, Nivea's journey through the music industry is heartbreaking. And when she tried to make a comeback, she found herself rejected by the very industry that once welcomed her. So what really happened to Nivea? Before we get into the relationships, we need to talk about the exploitation Nivea suffered at the hands of her manager. When she first entered the industry at just 14, she had no idea that the man guiding her career would also be the one to destroy it.
I met my manager, my first manager, when I was 14, 15 years old. We were just going around Atlanta.
Like many young artists, Nivea trusted the people around her to look out for her best interests. She was a teenager with a dream, excited to share her voice with the world. But instead of finding genuine mentorship, she ended up under the control of a man who would take everything from her. At first, he presented himself as a protector, someone who could guide her career and help her navigate the industry. He helped her land deals, introduced her to key players, and shaped her public image. But behind the scenes, things were far from professional.
We had an apartment, we was living together, and then,
Okay, and
yeah.
please don't, if I'm overstepping boundaries, was he trying to be intimate with you?
And trying, we were intimate.
So it was like a relationship?
Yes, it was, definitely.
How old was he?
Oh, my lamb, he was a lot older than me.
Nivea revealed that her manager wasn't just controlling, he was financially abusive, physically violent, and emotionally manipulative. He convinced her to sign a power of attorney agreement, which legally handed him control over her finances. This meant that every dollar she made was managed by him. Over the years, he stole massive amounts of money from her, leaving her with little to nothing. While Nivea was on television, making music videos and performing in front of thousands, the reality was that she barely had access to her own earnings. She was being used. Her talent, her image, and her voice were making money. But she wasn't seeing the benefits.
My manager was a great con artist. He was excellent.
But the financial abuse wasn't the worst part. Nivea also revealed that her manager physically assaulted her and, in one of the most disturbing revelations, pimped her out to industry figures while she was still underage. She described horrifying incidents where she was dragged through the house, bruised and terrified, trying to escape his control. Every time she tried to break free, he found a way to manipulate or threaten her into staying. She was trapped in a cycle of fear and abuse, forced to keep up the image of a rising star while living a personal nightmare.
He didn't punch me in the face, but I had bruises like all over my body because he was dragging me through the house because I was trying to leave.
Despite all of this, she still tried to push forward with her career. She still had dreams of being a successful artist, of creating music that would resonate with people. But the weight of her situation was unbearable. Eventually, she reached her breaking point. One night, after a particularly violent altercation with her manager, she saw her chance to escape. She ran out of the house, down the street, and into a McDonald's, where she frantically called Lil Wayne for help. At the time, it felt like a rescue. Wayne was one of the biggest names in music, and he had been a close figure in her life. She thought she was finally free, but as we'll soon see, escaping one toxic situation led her straight into another. Before everything fell apart, before the betrayals, before the heartbreak, there was just Nivea, a rising star, and Lil Wayne, the young rapper who caught her eye. Their story didn't start in chaos. In fact, it began with love. Nivea and Lil Wayne first met in the early 2000s when both were at the height of their rising careers. At the time, Nivea was dominating R&B with hits like Don't Mess With My Man, while Lil Wayne was quickly becoming one of the biggest rappers in hip-hop.
I met Wayne, he called me, child. Talking about, I want to do a song with Nivea. We met at Patchworks. I had Don't Mess With My Man video came out. He was like, who is this little sassy chick?
The two had undeniable chemistry, and it wasn't long before they were deeply involved. Lil Wayne quickly became a significant part of Nivea's life. He wasn't just a boyfriend. He was someone she saw a future with. Even when she was dealing with the trauma caused by her abusive manager, Lil Wayne was one of the few people she felt truly cared about her. So when she finally broke free from the manager's grip, it felt natural for her to lean on Wayne. But here's where things started to shift. Wayne was more than just a romantic partner. He was also someone with incredible influence. He had a way of making people believe in his vision, and unfortunately for Nivea, she believed in his promises more than she should have. At the height of her career, when Nivea was just getting started on what could have been a legendary run in R&B, Lil Wayne made her an offer that changed everything. He told her that she didn't need the music industry anymore. He would take care of her. At that moment, it sounded like a dream. After years of exploitation, abuse, and struggling to gain control over her own career, the idea of stepping away and being taken care of by someone she loved seemed like the perfect escape. Believing in him completely, Nivea made a decision that shocked everyone. She quit music. She wrote a letter to her label, officially stepping away from her career.
I'm like, oh my God, I quit my career for you. And that was that.
Her fans were confused, and so was the industry. How could someone with so much talent, with so much potential, just walk away? But Nivea wasn't second-guessing herself. She was in love, and at the time, love was all that mattered. But it didn't take long for everything to start falling apart. What Nivea didn't know was that Wayne had other plans that he hadn't shared with her. Shortly after persuading her to leave music and move in with him, he pulled one of the biggest betrayals of her life. Wayne told Nivea that he wanted her to move out of their shared home, temporarily. He assured her that it was just for a short while and that he would take care of her no matter what. But soon after she moved out, she realized the truth. Wayne had asked her to leave so that his ex-wife, Toya Johnson, could move back in.
He was like, I never stayed in an apartment before. Let's get an apartment. So we moved out the house, get an apartment. I didn't realize he did that to move Toya back in the house.
Nivea was devastated. The man who had promised her security, the man who told her to leave everything behind for him, had just tossed her aside. And she hadn't just lost Wayne, she had lost her career too. She had left the industry for a man who had no problem walking away from her when it suited him. As if that betrayal wasn't enough, things got even messier. Around the same time that Nivea was dealing with the heartbreak of losing Wayne, she found out she was pregnant with his child. But that wasn't the real shock. The real shock came when she found out that another woman was also pregnant by Lil Wayne, actress Lauren London. Both women had been unknowingly involved in the same situation. Neither knew about the other's pregnancy until it was too late.
I found out I was pregnant, and then he told me to sit down and told me Lauren London was pregnant. And so I was like, damn. You know, even through all of this, I was trying to still, because I believed he loved me and I loved him.
For Nivea, this was a crushing moment. She had already given up so much for Wayne, and now she was facing one of the most humiliating experiences of her life. What could have turned into an ugly feud actually brought Nivea and Lauren closer together. Instead of letting the situation turn them against each other, the two women leaned on one another. They realized they were in the same position. Both had been misled. Both had been hurt, and both were now mothers to Wayne's children. Their friendship became a silver lining in a painful situation, but for Nivea, the damage had already been done. Wayne's actions had shattered her trust, and she was now left picking up the pieces of her life, trying to figure out where to go from here. Losing Wayne was hard. Losing her career was harder. But losing herself in the process? That was the worst part of it all. Nivea fell into a deep depression. She had no music career to return to, no financial stability, and no clear direction. She had given up everything for a love that turned out to be a lie. By the time Nivea reached her early 30s, her life had spiraled into a dark place. She had gone from being one of the most promising R&B singers of the early 2000s to someone barely holding on. Years of emotional trauma, betrayal, and career setbacks had taken a serious toll on her, and she found herself turning to substances as a way to numb the pain.
I didn't want to do it no more. And I was addicted to where addiction is when you are completely out of control.
At first, it was just a way to escape. The disappointment of leaving the industry, the heartbreak of being deceived by Lil Wayne, and the pressure of trying to raise her children alone became too much to handle. What started as occasional use quickly turned into an addiction that controlled her life. One of the most heartbreaking moments she has ever shared was when she admitted to scraping through her carpet, searching for remnants of cocaine just to get high. That's when she realized just how far she had fallen. She wasn't just using drugs, she was consumed by them. Nivea knew she had a serious problem, but addiction isn't something you can just walk away from. It had already taken hold of her life, and she found herself trapped in a vicious cycle. She wanted to get better, but the pain of her past and the stress of trying to raise her children while feeling completely alone made it almost impossible. Throughout all of this, Nivea never stopped being a mother. No matter how much she was struggling, she loved her children deeply and didn't want them to suffer because of her mistakes. But as her addiction worsened, she began to fear the unthinkable, losing custody of her kids. The thought of being separated from them was terrifying, and it pushed her to try and get clean. She didn't want to be another industry tragedy. She didn't want to be the artist who was only remembered for what could have been. But even as she fought to regain control of her life, her health was beginning to deteriorate in ways she never expected. If addiction wasn't enough, Nivea also suffered a major health crisis that could have ended everything. During one of her pregnancies, she started consuming excessive amounts of salt to curb nausea. What seemed like a harmless habit at first turned into a dangerous situation. The high salt intake led to severe fluid retention, which caused her brain to swell. Eventually, she suffered a stroke. For most people, a stroke is a wake-up call. It's a reminder that life is fragile and that changes need to be made immediately. But for Nivea, it was just another reminder of how much she had already lost. Her body was breaking down. Her career had already taken a hit. And despite all the hardships she had been through, the music industry still wasn't willing to give her a second chance. Even after everything, losing her career, addiction, a health scare, Nivea never stopped trying to rebuild her life. She still had dreams. She still had music inside of her. But getting back into the industry wasn't easy. The industry had changed, and so had she. The same labels that once fought to sign her were no longer interested. The same audience that once sang along to her hits had moved on. And no matter how hard she tried, she struggled to reclaim her place. By the time Nivea attempted to return to music, she was no longer the industry's ideal R&B princess. Years had passed since her last major hit, and the music scene had evolved. The industry that had once welcomed her with open arms now saw her as someone who no longer fit the mold. One of the biggest challenges she faced was the music industry's rigid beauty standards. Nivea had become a mother, and while she still had talent, her more natural, unfiltered appearance didn't align with the polished, hyper-glamorous image that many female artists were expected to maintain. The industry had always placed heavy emphasis on looks, and after her time away, she no longer fit the image of a mainstream pop star. Her struggles weren't just about appearance. The industry thrives on relevance, and Nivea's absence made it difficult for her to reconnect with audiences. Newer artists had taken over, and even though she still had a loyal fan base, radio stations and record labels weren't as interested in giving her another shot. But it wasn't just the industry that made things difficult. Public perception played a big role in her struggles as well. Throughout her career, Nivea's relationships were just as talked about as her music, sometimes even more so. Her high-profile romances, especially with Lil Wayne and The Dream, kept her name in the tabloids, but not always for the right reasons. Many people questioned her choices and the stability of her personal life. Some even saw her as messy for being involved in the complicated love triangle with Lil Wayne and Lauren London. Instead of being viewed as a talented artist, she was often seen as just another woman caught up in the drama of celebrity relationships. Her marriage to The Dream also added another layer of scrutiny. When they first got together, it seemed like a fairy tale. Two successful artists building a life together. But behind the scenes, things weren't as perfect as they appeared. Their relationship didn't last long, and when they divorced, it became yet another headline for the public to dissect. The Dream quickly moved on to another high-profile relationship, which only fueled speculation and chatter about what really went wrong. People questioned Nivea's choices, and the media often focused more on her personal life than her music. Every time she tried to step back into the industry, it felt like she was being defined by her relationships rather than her talent. But despite everything she had been through, Nivea never gave up on music. She still had the passion and the talent, but every time she tried to make a comeback, something stood in her way. While she tried to release new music, industry insiders were skeptical. She was no longer the fresh-faced newcomer with a clean slate. Instead, she was a woman with a public history of struggles, and the industry wasn't sure if they could market her successfully. The skepticism wasn't just coming from labels, it also came from audiences. Many listeners still associated Nivea with her past, and people weren't as interested in giving her new music a chance. She was fighting against years of public perception that painted her as someone whose best days were behind her. Today, Nivea is still here. She may not be topping the charts like she once did, but her love for music hasn't faded. She continues to create, perform, and connect with fans who have supported her from the start. Despite the challenges she faced, Nivea remains passionate about her artistry. She's been open about her experiences, using her story to inspire and uplift others. Whether it's through her music or just sharing her truth, she's still making an impact in her own way. And while the industry has moved on to newer faces, one thing is clear: Nivea's voice, both in music and in life, still matters. Anyway, that's it for this video, folks. Bye.